Ladies, gentlemen, and young ladies, hello everyone. You are welcome to this news geopolitical conference dedicated to international news. In the headlines of world news, the Republic of Ivory Coast is in tension unprecedented. Weeks before the election presidential, we are witnessing a so-called repression preventive, a repression that does not say, not his name. On the side of the coast of Ivory Coast, the power has bayoneted all spaces public, the demonstrations completely prohibited. But the people who are fed up with all this which is happening, in particular the opposition, does not calm down. Anger becomes growing. At the moment, we are in the process of speak time has been launched. The opposition asks that every day that God makes that people come out to demonstrate until election day. And this is a very serious call, since it plunges Ivory Coast into an unprecedented situation. As you can see it in the images, the situation is very, very serious. So, as part of this conference, it is of course this news that we're going to talk. But before continue, I humbly ask you to share the conference, put a lot of likes, share it as much as possible. So let's go into the depths. And so it must be said that the demonstrations are blocked in Abidjan. Law enforcement has banned and dispersed the marches organized by the Common Frank PPAKI and PDCI RDA. They had already come out on 11. On the 12th, they rested. On the 13th, they are still out. So there are cases of several injuries that were reported after the use of tear gas and mass arrests in the neighborhoods from Yopougon and Kokodi. Several arrests are pending, and so we are witnessing a so-called repression preventive since the power has locked all public spaces. It's a frame. The police are there. The gendarmerie is located in all cases. The police are at level of all public spaces, wherever the people can gather. And finally, what happens? Opposition leaders are in the process of denounce an electoral dictatorship in construction. For them, it's a semblance of an election which is going to take place and they are not agree with. So the political parties of the Common Front are now calling for demonstrations until the presidential election from the 25th until October 25th. So that means now until the 25th, it's non-stop. So you know that the Ivorian people, the Ivorian opposition is really determined. These are people who follow the example of what is happening in the AS and what is happening at surroundings of Ivory Coast. The mandate that Alassane Ouattara is facing is a mandate too many, and the opposition is determined. But Ouattara is also determined to have whatever the cost of this mandate. We are first in the pre-election phase. They will continue the demonstrations until the 25th. But after the 25th, when the results are given, what does the opposition plan? It must be said that the number of citizens, Ivorians, who are integrating the opposition, the number begins to be very high. Some even who were not interested in the police at the politics today, have integrated the politics. They have integrated because they don't want to continue to see Ouattara lead the country for a fourth term. They say that the 3 terms were good, that's enough. So the election campaign is already biased, it must be said, since a candidate who is president, and he is a candidate at the same time, he is president, he is in power, he uses the means of the state, and it has no real competitor. So Alassane Ouattara, who opened his campaign in a climate truly festive, orchestrated by the state, while the opposition themselves have neither access to public media, neither access nor authorization for a meeting. The opposition does not have permission to do meetings. They don't even have access to the public media. So ultimately, these are social networks that are in the process of relay all information concerning the Ivorian opposition. And that's why I ask you to share. We must share as much as possible to let the whole world know what is happening on the side of Ivory Coast. Since public media do not give the floor to the opposition, we can relay their information. And so it must be said that, and the regime no longer displays any withholding. In Ivory Coast, the regime assumes an authoritarian drift. There are targeted arrests that are in course. There is local intimidation. There is digital surveillance of opposition leaders. The country is sliding from an electoral democracy to an administration of silence. That's it. And those who don't have the courage to go out to join the opposition, They are afraid. They are in anguish. They are sitting at home. They refuse to talk, since speaking is already creating oneself trouble. So democracy has disappeared on the Ivory Coast side. The democracy has disappeared, yes. So we must say that the worst is that there is a rise, a real one rise of popular anger, and the civil disobedience is now in walk. And so the calls for resistance, which were launched by the coordination's regional ones, that find a replacement, whether it is the students, whether it is the unions and small traders, everyone joined the movement. Many joined the movement and they called for resistance. But in practice, we are witnessing a kind of civil disobedience now. So the power is disconnected, since while the regime talks about stability, since that is what the regime says, that there is the stability. But during this time, the population speaks of end of electricity, unemployment, and so on. And then young people are no longer waiting for reform. In fact, they are demanding a change outright. What Ouattara did is good. They want 109 new blood, new faces at the head of state Guinean, and at least that of the state Ivorian. And as you know, normally we live in a democracy. Democracy is about letting the others to express themselves. But if the opposition is bayoneted to such a level, it must say that this is the work of the France. We're not going to hide that it's France that acts like that. There you go. We must at all costs that Ouattara remains in power. This is to help preserve the interest of what we call France. That's it. Because if Ouattara leaves power in Ivory Coast, is that France has fallen. It is finished for France. It's over. Because it's the last link in the France-Africa chain who is still in power on the side of West Africa. And Laurent Gbagbo, he promised if he came to power, no, it was to join the Ivory Coast at the AS. That's clear straight away if he didn't say clearly H publicly. But in the formulations that he had to exercise, we understand automatically. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was the front page of international news. Thank you for the share. I'll come back to you with some new information. So that was the voice of your humble servant, the samurai.